Hello everyone and welcome to Climate Australia. I am your host Lee Constable, and today we've got a very special guest and topic lined up, and we're on at a special time too. I'm not normally on camera at this time of day. But first, I wanted to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I am broadcasting to you on. I am here in what is now known as Redcliffe, but it is the land of the Turrbal people and the Gubbi Gubbi people, and we are on the Quandamooka coast. So I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present, and also acknowledge the ongoing relationship that Indigenous people, not just here in Australia but worldwide, have with land, sea and sky. And we are talking about not just climate change and climate action, but climate justice today, which of course is a relevant topic, and First Nations people are central to climate justice all around the world. And speaking globally, we will be having a guest today that is not here in Australia. And I just wanted to acknowledge whoever you are out there, that you're all joining me from First Nations lands as well. So let me know in the chat where you are. You might be joining me on YouTube Live, on Facebook Live, or here in the home of Climate Australia, which is Simpatico TV. So say hello, let us know where you are, especially let us know if you know the First Nations people whose land you're on. That's always great to know, and if you don't know, this is a great time to find out. And this brings me to my guest today. Sandra Guzmán is someone who I actually met on the trip of a lifetime. Sandra Guzmán and I met because we were both going to Antarctica on a ship full of women with STEM backgrounds and working in all different areas, from policy to technology to environment to chemistry to medicine, physics and beyond. And we were going to Antarctica. So Sandra Guzmán is someone I met on that amazing trip. But we were also faced with the beauty of Antarctica, the fragility of Antarctica, and also the amazing women around us were really inspiring. And we were faced with that awesome fact, as well as a lot of the harder truths when it comes to how far we still have to go in gender equity, and specifically the need for diverse voices when it comes to climate action and justice. So I'm going to invite to the stream Sandra Guzmán now to join us and tell us about herself, and we'll get into talking about Defensoras as well and all things climate. Welcome, San.
How are you? Thank you so much for inviting me to this amazing space. I'm very, very excited and very grateful because I remember that amazing trip, and I know that since then we have been trying to keep fighting, no, in these important missions that we have, because there are different crises that we are facing at the moment, and this is our time, no, to join and to be together to do something. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
No, thank you. And it is a really, I feel like my entire life since I first heard about climate change, every time has been the critical time, but this is being called the critical decade for climate action because of that IPCC report that basically was like, this is where the cliff is, this is where we are, this is how much, we can't undo. We just have to try and mitigate and adapt all at once. We have no time for either or. We have to throw our all at it now, this decade. So how are you feeling at the start of the decade? I think we're all feeling tired from 2020.
Absolutely. And I would say that it has been really impressive, the speed. When I started working on climate change, I was doing my studies at university. I was studying international relations, and I was really, really curious about how these global problems, not only climate change, but at that time we were also talking about the ozone layer depletion. And for me, it was extremely important to know how we as humanity are going to face this, because it's not something that you can solve only in one country. Are global problems that don't have any frontiers. In that sense, you are really thinking, okay, this is what we are facing now. And this is something that governments should be doing something about it, but we know that even the work of the government is never going to be enough. And when I started, I'm talking about 2002, like back almost 18 years ago. And now in my lifetime, I have seen so much changes in the negative side, of course, but also in the positive side. I think, I mean, you and me, we have been observing, and we were witness of what is happening in Antarctica, for instance, which is just an example of what is happening in the world. But every single year, you hear that it's the hottest year. Every single year, we hear about the number of hurricanes that are coming and destroy and taking so much from people. And every single year, you hear about the species that are dying, that are declining, and it's scary. It's very scary. But at the same time, I think what we have in our hands is the opportunity to really reframe, to recreate a narrative, and to really engage people to the reality, and try to say, this is not about governments. This is about us as humans. No, this is about what is our relationship with nature, what we are doing, how we are going to live every single day of our lives, to do something to keep that balance that we are obviously really breaking. And this is every single person's responsibility. This is not only that we will solve only from the public service, but we really have to reframe the narrative. And I think we need hope. No, of course, we are in a terrible scenario, but I feel that if we are not optimistic, as Christiana Figueres said, it's going to be really difficult to do this, not only for us, but we are talking about our kids, our children, the future generations. How can we look at their eyes, really, as Greta said, and say we did all what we could? No, and I think we have a long trip to go, but the point is really taking this responsibility and take it home, take it to your activities. You don't have to be an environmentalist to protect nature, and that's something that we have to talk. But I feel scared, I have to say, and sometimes very frustrated, but at the same time very, very optimistic about people that are there doing something, and because I can see that there are more people engaged on these topics.
Yeah, and it's not just fringe people, extreme people, people who fit into people's stereotypes about who cares. And it's also, I'm glad to see, it's also a discussion that is going beyond talking about it in an environmental sense, because that kind of assumes we're separate from the environment, and as we know, we're not. But also, it's a discussion that involves our health, that involves our ability to keep roofs over our heads, that involves our physical and mental safety and well-being, as well as people's businesses, livelihoods, cultures. I'm just learning more and more about the Torres Strait Islands here in Australia, and their islands are at stake. They're places where their cultures are connected to, because the connection between person and place is so strong for all of us who have a relationship with nature, but especially for Indigenous people's relationships with place. When it comes to being a Mexican woman, what does your relationship with place and people and culture mean in terms of climate change?
I think it's very, very interesting, because obviously as a Latina and as a Mexican, we face, or I started analyzing climate change from that perspective. Not what is happening in my country, the droughts, the terms of what was happening with the production of food, what was happening with the scarcity of water, and then you try to understand how all of these things are happening around the world. And of course, it's really sometimes it's really frustrating, but I can see now how important it is to really come together from the different perspectives and really understand that what we are facing in our daily basis is something that others are facing as well. And this, unfortunately, the impacts are not the same. We have to say it. Like, there are populations that are very vulnerable populations that are right in the front line, no? But that doesn't mean that the rest of us, we are not going to face those problems in the future. And that's precisely the call. what you see in the news every day about climate change, and you might say, poor people that is suffering there in Bangladesh, but it's actually something that will be coming and closer and closer, no? And in that sense, for instance, what I have been observing is the necessity to really listen the different voices. What we are suffering at the moment is part of a really of a model that is failing, a model that has been extractive so much elements for nature that now is causing a problem in the balance of the ecosystems. And this model is the economic model that we are sustaining, no? The capitalism. And what we are demanding is, okay, reframe the way that we see well-being. No, what is what makes you happy every single day? And in that sense, I think we really have to hear the voices of youth, the voices of indigenous people, the voices of women. No, so far what we have seen in the decision-making processes are most of the decisions are male-based. No, a lot of men taking decisions about future when they don't really see life in terms of this solidarity as women do, for instance. No, so I think this is the moment where we really have to rethink how we are taking decisions and reframe the type of policies that are in place to bring all the different perspectives together and respect the diversity. And don't want, it's not necessarily to be in the same boat, because we are actually not in the same boat. We're in different little boats, and what we have to do is go together, no? But listening what is really what the nature is telling us to do, and also collaborate, no, and among countries, among communities. And I think the pandemic is giving us really, really an important opportunity to see how global problems can affect all of us, and how important it is to collaborate if we want to face this together. No?
Yeah, and what I was just thinking about when you were talking was a piece of news I saw yesterday that was sad and sadly not surprising, which was that the richest Western countries have 15% of the population and are buying up, it was between 40 and 50% of the vaccines for COVID. So it's like we have this situation with climate change where the richest countries, the ones who have the most ability to influence in a positive or negative way, are also the ones who have the most ability to buy their way out of the worst impacts. And that's a huge challenge. Just quickly saying hello to Fiona Chambers on Facebook. Hi from South Africa. Joseph Vile, very inspiring. Thank you, Sandra. And Sarah on Simpatico TV just says, Sandra, I'm very excited to see you. But yeah, it's a difficult thing because the people who have the most to lose and are already losing so much, because we can't pretend that climate change refugees aren't already a problem and that people aren't already losing their places of work and culture and their livelihoods. But they're also the people who potentially have the least political sway when it comes to international climate negotiations. I'm thinking of Pacific Islanders, for instance. They've been asking my country, Australia, as one of their major neighbours to do more, and is also one of the biggest contributors and one of the contributors of coal to the world, not just our own emissions, but other countries' emissions, to do more. As someone who goes to these climate negotiations, what gives you hope that these nations that have less, more to lose and less in terms of capitalism can actually make a big difference and actually have countries listen?
This is very interesting, and the first time that I went to the negotiations was in 2008 in the Poznan COP. And I have to say that for me, it was like this really exciting moment to see so many people, gather together, like to talk about climate change and to talk about solutions and to talk about, like really the future, no? What is the vision? Where we want to go? But at the same time, it was extremely, extremely, extremely frustrating to follow the actual negotiations. Not like countries can spend like hours and hours discussing where the comma should go, or where the dot should go, or where the full stop, and that's extremely frustrating because I mean they are literally playing the future of all of us. No, in that little negotiations room, in those negotiation rooms, they are literally putting all our future in those moments. So could be very frustrating in that sense because sometimes I think, and after following the negotiations for 12 years already, I think that sometimes they miss the point, no, and they don't see what is really the core of the problem. As I was saying, is the actual model. So we have to really start reframing how we see the problem. And in that sense, I think what I observe in the negotiations is that sometimes the people that are the negotiating, they don't have any relationship with the territories. They don't really understand what is happening in the real world, no, like those impacts, no. So you see the people that are really in this high, no, sphere of the society, and they are not necessarily connected. Not all of them, of course, but it's something common. But at the same time, what really gives me hope is to see that there is a growing number of people engaged in this. So the first time that I went to the negotiations, I see a fair amount of people, but now every single year, more people, more young people, more people from academia, from the private sector. And what is really showing us the negotiation, because it's changing. I have to say that since the Paris Agreement was signed in 2005, actually is celebrating in a few days the fifth anniversary of this Paris Agreement. That was a massive achievement, just for two reasons. The first one is because it really puts in the heart of the conversation the responsibility that the call to action from the different parts of the world. Obviously, they recognize that developed countries have been the ones, as you were saying, emitting the most of the greenhouse emissions, but developing countries have also do something about it, no? Because if we just wait for another country to do something, then we are just gonna waste our time. So I think what it gives me hope is that more and more people it's aware about what is happening, and I think a central point is the information. Now we have more information from the IPCC, which is this group of scientists that are working in really understanding deeply the problem, and that information is more available, no? Because it used to be very, very scientific in the scientific world, and not necessarily from the common people, like learning and knowing what was happening. And now we have more access to this information. And now that we have information, we have the obligation and the moral responsibility to do something about it. And this is precisely the call, that the negotiations are there and they will stay there every single year. The countries will be joining and discussing and trying to improve certain parts of the agreement and stuff. But the key point of all of these negotiations is the actual implementation. We have an agreement, is there, our countries are part of it. Now they have to comply. And the problem is that the actions that the countries are, put in the table as commitments are not enough to stabilize emissions in a point that the temperature won't go beyond the 2 degrees Celsius. That, and a scenario of 2 degrees Celsius for the humanity and the ecosystems is terrible. And now the point is, we as citizens also have the obligation to push to the governments, but also to keep pushing other sectors to do so, and try to work together, no? Because this is not a fight that we will face only from the south or only from the north. It's moment to start redefining those north-south definitions, and work together.
Yeah, and I've definitely noticed, because we have so much of the so much of the Western countries in the Northern Hemisphere, and Australia is one of the Western countries in the Southern Hemisphere, you do notice that there is a kind of Northern Hemisphere bias sometimes in the way that people think about even something as global as climate change. But we can really see that we're part of one climate when it comes to things like the huge fires here in Australia and then the huge fires in the States. And that's two Western countries, North and South, seeing the red, orange skies and the big fires in areas where they have had fires and will have fires, but more intense fires, or in times that aren't normally fire season and things like that. So it's great to hear that people are becoming more and more aware about that and sharing information. Also, hello to Jason, who has been saying hello on Facebook. Hi from Indiana, thank you. So so far we've got an audience who has said hello from Virginia and Indiana in the States. We've also got someone from South Africa and someone in Canberra, which is our capital in Australia. So say hello if you are out there watching. It's always nice to know who's there. And also remember, you can write in any questions that you have as we go, because it's good to make this a conversation. So now I just wanted to talk about Defensoras. Tell everyone about Defensoras, where it came from, and what the idea is.
Awesome. Well, first of all, I think I think as part of my journey, let's say, being part of these international negotiations and other scenarios, what I realized is that even though the number of women in this political context is growing and growing, there is still a massive gap in terms of representation, and not only women, but also young women. And if you talk about Latinas, the amount of Latinas working in the international scenario is very little. So when we had this opportunity to be part of this initiative that you were mentioning, and that we have the opportunity to travel to Antarctica, I realized that there are so many initiatives that are now available, trying to empower women to work in different things. But these initiatives are very let's say, limited in terms of perspective. Sometimes are very expensive, sometimes are in English, and we in Latin America, we don't necessarily speak English like fluently all the time. And sometimes they are like very into a definition of leadership that is not always what you want. I mean, it's what's the purpose of the leadership? So when I came back and I was analyzing it, and I said, it's really incredible how important it is to create community. This sense of community, this sense of really that you belong to a place where you can be part of that community and bring ideas to solve problems. So Defensoras is a network that aims to provide women and also men, because now recently there are a few men that are also part of the initiative, provide them with tools to strengthen their capacities to take care or to protect nature. And what we are talking about, Defensoras, is a network where we all are learning all the time. No, there is no one person that knows everything. No, we are learning from each other all the time with very different profiles, young leaders, like leaders that have been working in this for a while. And what we really want is to have that space to exchange, to learn, to feel, like that warm kind of momentum where you can really keep growing as a person, but also professionally. And I think at the end of the day, what we want is to really create this community to create solutions or to promote solutions to protect the environment, to protect our human rights. That, by the way, today is the Day of Human Rights, so it's amazing, and to protect our rights as women as well. No, so we women, young Latinas, we are always facing this unequal treatment, or I don't know how do you really call that, but it's always difficult to be part of certain processes. So Defensoras tries to kind of create a community to bring solutions. And of course, we would love to keep growing the family and to join forces with other women from Africa, from Asia, and with this idea, no, of that we are part of a society, a global society that needs to work together to provide these solutions. So we are very happy to think in the leadership more than as a leadership, as a unique communitarian work, no, where you can really build ideas from different perspectives, and I think is the way how you can treat problems in a more effective way.
Yeah, absolutely, because we all only can see one part of the problem, and even when we can all see the same part, we all have different perspectives on that and different areas of experience or expertise or all of the above to bring to that. So it's so good that you're breaking down some of these barriers between people and bringing them together. Hello to another Jason. This is the second Jason. We've had one Jason watching on Facebook and one watching on Simpatico. And also Disa says hello. I hope I said Disa. I hope I said your name right. G'day from Stockholm. These issues are so big. It's always so great to see how people are really organising around them. I have to agree. It seems so big. I also wanted to ask, in terms of Defensoras, Latinas have this kind of unified identity, although there are so many different cultural identities when it comes to people in all different Central and South American countries, let alone within those countries. So I just wanted to talk a little bit, or ask you to talk a little bit about the importance of First Nations Latina voices in something like Defensoras.
Yeah, of course. And well, probably for the colleagues that are with us, defensoras means female defenders. Defensoras is the word in Spanish, and we really wanted to make honor, no, to the name in Spanish is a female name. I think, as you said, I think we Latinos and Latinas have this strong cultural background. But I wouldn't say that it's a unified background. I suppose it's part of every single country, and every single region have their own kind of differences. And I think in Latin America, we are kind of working a lot in trying to close those gaps in terms of the different cultures. And what I really like for the last years and decades, we have been listening a lot about the important role that the indigenous communities play in cultures like in countries like Mexico, Ecuador, Peru, Brazil, and all the different countries in Latin America. And we have been hearing about it, but we see governments and communities, international organizations that were not really listening, like their voices. And now that we are facing problems such as climate change, we see more and more interest in hearing the voices of indigenous communities, and basically it's because they have this vision of life that is very, very different of what we kind of know, or what we have been the perception that we have as more Occidental cultures. And it's absolutely amazing. I had the opportunity to go with my dear friend Belen to the Amazonia last year as part of the Defensoras, as part of this concept that we were building. And actually, based on that trip, we created this course called Defensoras de la Pachamama, which is precisely a course for women to talk about the Amazon, like this important territory, and the important role that the indigenous communities have in the protection of this territory. Without the indigenous communities, plenty of our territories could be completely lost. Like, and the amount of the massive territories that are protected, for instance, in the Amazon, in Africa, and in other places, are thanks to the indigenous communities. So I had the opportunity to visit the Amazon last year, and for me it was really a transformational trip, because I have been hearing about the indigenous communities, but when you are living with them, when you are listening, like their hearts and their souls, and how they see nature, or how they see themselves as part of nature, because at the end of the day, we are part of nature. we are part of it, and we don't have these conversations in a big city, like when you are just like in middle of thousands of cars and thousands of buildings, you don't really feel that you are part of the environment, of the nature. When you go to the jungle in the Amazon, for me it was like really amazing to see how important it is to protect these territories, but how important it is to protect their cultures and their perspectives, and protect the knowledge. No, they have been living with those traditions for all the years that you can imagine, and it's not and some people believe, that because they don't live as the people in the big cities, then they have less I don't know, less developed, they are less developed. And it's like, no. When you hear what they do, when you hear what is really what they value, it's amazing. And I think really we need to protect all that knowledge, all that culture. Unfortunately, the globalization, the demands that the globalization is obviously creating, is affecting the territories. Now, in the community of Xaramensa in Ecuador, they are suffering this extraction of the good in the jungles, because now they are suffering this demand of this good from other countries. So now they have to start cutting their trees to sell, to fulfill the needs of other communities or other societies from across the world. And it's like, how can we create a society that is respectful of the territories of other countries? And how can we create a society that really respects the values and the beliefs? Because we don't have to believe exactly the same, but we have to be respectful. No, we don't have to be all indigenous to respect what they believe, and we have to learn so much from them. So I think it's in Latin America, we have so much things to value from the indigenous communities, and I feel very, very humble in the sense of having that opportunity to be with them, and now working with Belen in this project to keep raising awareness about the important territory. For me, it's a massive, lesson of life, and I would like to keep working on it to call more people to protect these important territories.
Yeah, and you mentioned, people make these assumptions in cities, especially in, white Western culture, that Indigenous people, especially people who live traditionally off the land, are less developed. But if you really think about where our white person lifestyle has taken us, is it less developed? It seems like it's a backwards way to be over extracting the world, and not thinking about ourselves as part of the environment certainly has not done us any favors as a planet, let alone individually. I also wanted to ask you about how you see yourself in this, because I know that you have part of your heritage and ancestry is Indigenous, and then you've got, I guess the thing about Indigenous identity is that it's not just about biology, it's about culture and things like that, and having a connection to culture. What has that journey been like for you?
This is really, actually, I suppose, is one of the key elements that explain how we have been losing our roots. So my mom is from the north of Puebla, which is a state in Mexico, where there are indigenous communities, and she grew up, with that heritage. Unfortunately, she had to leave, the little town, and to go to the big city to keep studying, to keep, pursuing a career. And when she moved to Mexico City, and then she had a family, and I grew up in Mexico City, really far from my roots, let's say. And I was connected because obviously my grandparents were in Puebla, and we used to go every summer or every holiday, and in a way we were connected. But for instance, I didn't manage to learn how to speak Nahuatl, which is the language, that traditional language that is from the town. And I was, now that I'm an adult, I feel so sorry because I didn't manage to absorb and to really not only absorb and internalize, but also to transfer that values and that culture to my son, for instance. And it's something that I always was telling to one of my uncles. I always wanted to learn how to speak Nahuatl and keep like building those roots. And it's a way where you can see that we have been losing, no? And imagine, this is only like an example, but imagine how many people have immigrated, for instance, from Mexico to the US, no? Because looking and pursuing for better jobs. And of course, what happens is that they go to the US, and when they come back, they have a completely different perspective of life, no? They want to drink Coca-Cola, and they want to, eat a burrito instead of really go to the traditional food. And we are definitely losing values in those roots. And I think is precisely one of the big calls of the communities, not only in Puebla in this case, but all around the world, is precisely try to do something about it, no? Like try to really keep working and keep valuing these languages, and try to push. I have lots of families still there, and I want to say hi to all of them, because they are really really trying to pursue and to keep this amazing culture. So hopefully one day I will learn, and I will try to transmit all of these values and all the experiences that I had to my son, because I think it's part of what we have to do to really don't lose that connection. And I just wanted to mention something. So imagine, this is part of the culture, but I was also thinking, like, imagine how many kids are growing in the cities, no? In cities, instead of close to a forest or close to another nature area. So kids are growing really far from nature. So when we talk about the future, and we talk about, okay, kids are the future of this world because they are going to protect nature. And would you think about, but they are not growing with nature. They are not growing with that perception that they belong to nature. So we are just replicating this model. And when you go to the Amazon and see the kids and see how they live, it's precisely what we have to start talking with our kids, like, what's the relationship with nature, why they have to protect animals, why they have to be part of this. And instead of just pretending that they have to learn just for the sake of learning, when they are not there. They just go to the park for, like, to do some running and stuff, but they are not connected. And so it's part of the mission that we have, connecting with our culture and connecting with the territory, with nature, to really understand, the cycles and what the nature is telling us, like to keep balance. But if we are not connected, it's very, very difficult to achieve that.
Yeah, and I think each generation we make our own environmental baselines through what we see in nature. So what my grandparents saw of areas of Australia that my family has lived in will look different to what my parents and me, what I saw when I grew up on the farm, was definitely not representative of the decades and decades before, because of the massive drought at the time. So I then had this skewed vision, but if we don't have this kind of intergenerational connection, as well as this connection with country and place, we can lose that. It's definitely cool to see the next generation, to see Gen Z taking on, it's sad to see them taking on this climate change problem as their own, but it's heartening to see it as well, that they're so connected. I think as a millennial, social media was kind of a thing in high school, but it definitely did not have the same potential for organizing and for having this kind of connection with people even outside of my hometown in the same way. So it's really cool to see them harnessing that technology to have that connection with each other and have a voice in a way that they haven't before. When you think about your son Milo, how do you, as someone who knows all too well about the risks and the threat, but also have all this hope, I hear from a lot of parents who don't have the same connection to what's happening in the climate, and potentially don't even have the same opportunity to see causes for hope that you do. So how do you kind of talk to him about it in a way that is not overwhelming, but is exciting and challenging, but also, you know, age appropriate, because it's so hard to know what that is?
It's really difficult. It's really difficult, and I have to say that took me a while. First of all, to decide being a mom, because I have been studying climate change for a while now, and it's definitely is the type of information that, of course, I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to have a career and learn so much stuff. But in the daily basis, is like, you cannot celebrate anything because you are thinking, oh, this package, this, and this, that. But in the case of Milo, I suppose what I have been trying to do is, first of all, like really teaching him to respect plants, animals, no, like that we are not the owners, no, because sometimes it's like we have this pet, or we see this spider, we are gonna kill it. And so it's how to respect the environment and how to respect your where you are, and I'm trying to transmit this idea of the connection. No? We are part of it. So we locally live now in the green heart of England, in Kent, which is full of forests. It's very amazing because it reminds me precisely to the place where my mom grew up in Puebla, which was beautiful and full of forests. And that's what I recall from my childhood. No? And that's why I feel that connection from since I was a kid. And we go to the forest and we try to talk about the trees, what type of animals. And this is precisely how he starts like really understanding. I try not to talk a lot about the crisis, but still like a lot about taking care of water, like electricity, food, don't waste food. Not everyone has a plate of food in the table as you. But always trying to bring a message of hope, like whatever he does in life is what I always say. You will be part of this society, so you have to decide what you want to do because you will contribute. Now he wants to be a vet and take care of animals.
Well, that lesson's obviously worked well.
Let's see what's happening and what will happen. But I think it's for kids, and as you said, it's really hard to see. I have lots of young friends, and I love them very much because I admire them, their power, and they are really trying to do many stuff. And it's hard. It's hard to see how they are putting all the weight, in their shoulders about climate change. And what I'm trying to do is just to support them. Like I started in this very young, and I remember like to feel, that I'm so young, and that sometimes it's a barrier, even though it shouldn't be, but sometimes it is. So I'm just trying to support the fight that many young people is having, and trying to do as much as I can to transfer that, like the sense of hope. Of course, it's difficult, but if we don't transmit the sense of hope, we can really create like very depressive, generations, and I don't think that is really the solution.
And talking to, for instance, I had Rebecca Huntley on the show before, and she is someone who's a researcher of social trends and climate communication, and she said, hope is useful if it's an active feeling, if it comes with I'm hopeful because I know I can do something or something can happen, not I'm hopeful everything will be fine in the end and putting a blanket over our head. So it's a really interesting thing to think about when we think about how we communicate these things. You've clearly given some hope to Disa on the chat. She said it's that this has really made things feel less overwhelming, which is great. Mark Spencer's saying hi from Melbourne. We've only got a few more minutes, so if you've got a question, you better type it out quick. But where do people go to find out more about Defensoras, and what do you think people who might be interested anywhere in the world should be thinking about when it comes to COP and these international climate negotiations, because it's a very big, complicated thing to those of us, even me as someone who's been invested in climate from like a science and communication perspective, thinking about the political side of things blows my mind. Where should people begin?
Of course. Well, in terms of Defensoras, which is a network that actually I was talking with some colleagues earlier today about like trying to grow the network internationally. So there is a group in Facebook that is growing, and I will type it just now there. And of course, you are very, very welcome. And as I said, this is not only for specific ages. At the end of the day, we are learning from different generations. So you are very, very welcome. I think next year, so let's say that today we could be probably in a conference of the parties on climate change, but because of the pandemic, the COP was transferred to next year in 2021 in November. And it is a very complicated process. The climate negotiations are like overwhelming, actually. But I would say locally, the Secretariat of the Convention has been creating a lot of information about what's the Paris Agreement, what's a COP, how to be involved. So there is a lot of, for instance, participation of non-governmental parties, parties that observers, that can go to the negotiation and learn what is happening. So I recommend you to go, for instance, to the UNCCC website, and you will have a lot of resources in different languages, which is awesome because it's not always, the negotiations are pretty much everything is in English, but you have a lot of documents in Spanish. But what I would like to emphasize in this point is that definitely as citizens, we really need to be engaged in these conversations, at least to understand what is happening, and why? Because we want to take all these international agreements into action. Doesn't matter if you are living in a small city or in a big city or in a rural area, we all have to be aware about what is happening, and not only demand to our governments to increase the ambition, but also we have to start defining how we are going to be part of the solution. And in this scenario, I can tell you there are a lot of people that even there is even a whole side part of the conference that is people that go to the conference that are not related to the negotiations at all. No, they just go to have conference, to exchange knowledge and meet people. So it's very, very awesome because you have these two kind of frameworks, and it's always important to kind of know what is happening with the politicians because it's important to have an eye on them. But it's really amazing to know that there is a massive community that is trying to create solutions and to really exchange information. So I recommend you to be part of that conversation as well. And I'm very happy to leave my details as well if anyone has doubts and I can be useful to understand this process. I'm more than happy. And just to say that I'm extremely happy to be here with Lee. I just want to say hi to my mother-in-law, Fiona, that is here with us from South Africa.
Oh, that was Fiona from South Africa saying hi.
And all my friends that are also connected watching. And thank you so much, Lee. I'm very, very, very happy to be here with you.
Thank you, Sandra. And I've just posted in the Facebook live chat as well as the Simpatico TV chat the link to Defensoras Facebook page. Nina says, #Sandra's fan club, we love you, with 3 love hearts. There was also Viviana, this is on the Facebook chat, who had a Snoopy holding a love heart. You've got lots of fans out there. This is great. And I love knowing that Fiona from South Africa is your mother-in-law.
My mother-in-law. Yeah.
So good to have such supportive family all around the world being able to tune in. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I am a big fan of you and Defensoras, and it's so cool to see what you're up to. And it's so cool to see you having all these discussions, not only in English, but in Spanish, and encouraging other people to talk about climate in whatever languages they can speak to get the word further and further out there. And yeah, I wish you luck in learning a new language yourself. Good luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I also love you, and I admire you also very, very much. And I'm very happy that Simpatico knowing all this show, because this is what we need, like more people knowing about what is happening about climate change and all this stuff. And I'm very happy that you, like with your amazing personality, is doing this. No? So I think you are like a
It's my
massive,
favorite thing
massive
to do.
to do this. So well done.
Well, it's a win-win because I just get to sit here and ask all the questions and become so inspired and learn from people like you. So thanks again. And yeah, say goodbye to everyone, Sandra, and we'll be seeing you soon.
Thank you so much, everyone. See you soon. And thanks a lot for the opportunity, Lee.
Thank you. So that was Sandra Guzmán. She's the founder of Defensoras. She's also been at these international climate negotiations we hear so much about for so long, since the early 2000s. So she was quite obviously she's ageless, so I have no idea how old Sandra is, but she must have been like a child when she was there. So she is someone who is a very inspiring person, not just bringing together people across generations, across borders, across cultures within borders. Yeah, definitely check out Defensoras. Get involved if you are someone who's looking to connect with people about climate change and learn from people. If you are a Spanish speaker, especially, that is a great place to go to hear all these discussions happening in Spanish as well. And I'll be back soon this morning with another guest, Dan Illick, who has recently won Podcast of the Year in the comedy category here in Australia. He actually hosts A Rational Fear, which is where he brings together different comedians and public figures, and they have climate discussions, but through this comedic podcast that's really entertaining. So we're going to be talking about comedy as a strategy for climate communication. Thank you so much, everyone. I am signing off the live stream now, but thanks so much for watching, and I hope you'll join me again on Climate Australia. Bye.